Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good. Thank you, Petfood Forum, for allowing this forum to take place, so to speak. It's 30 years since they've been doing this. I feel a little nostalgic in a way because I've been in packaging for 39 years. Everything from a service engineer, installing equipment, to a salesperson, to senior management. And so I've seen a lot of changes in the industry. I will say that in today's environment, I don't think I've ever seen a transformational change like we have going on today with film and machinery in terms of recyclability and compostability. There's always been advances in films and machinery, but to the extent that we're doing it today, in my lifetime, it's unheard of, or at least in my 39 years in packaging. And even though I've had 39 years of packaging experience, I'm still learning every day. And the day that stops happening is the day I'm not going to be in packaging anymore. So one thing I do know is that specifically for today's presentation, perception is reality. The perception of having recyclable films or compostable films is reality. One perfect example is the largest retailer in America, North America, has an objective of having 100% recyclability materials or compostable materials by the year 2025. That's only 2.5 years away. That's a big deal. Because right now, most of us are either using, as producers, are using laminated films, metallic films or metallized films, aluminum. We have considerations for modified atmosphere packaging. All those things have to be thought of, be replaced for 2025. That is a big deal. There's a lot of inroads being made. There's a lot of advances, even in the last 3 years, that have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And I can tell you right now, as of today, there's a lot of things that are doing good, but in no means are we 100% there. We have a long way to go. And I would suspect that probably in 2.5 years, there's going to be some kind of compromise by retailers, by manufacturers, because frankly, I don't think we're going to have it all figured out in 2.5 years, but everybody's trying their darndest to make it happen. So the new materials and compostable materials is what I want to talk about just briefly. I'm not a material expert. I'm a machinery expert, but I do know what we need to do from a machinery side to get recyclable materials to work, compostable materials to work. There's a couple of things that you can also do as manufacturers to try to use existing machinery to modify them for the materials. What I wanted to go through is the compostability, recyclability is being driven by the consumer. That's no surprise. Also the retailer. And we just talked about the objective of being 100% recyclable or compostable in the year 2025. I just got back from Europe. They're probably about 2 to 3 years ahead of us, frankly, in terms of films, in terms of their local municipalities being able to accept more recyclable materials than we are. It's pretty amazing, in my opinion, that where they're at versus us. So I think the good news is there's people that are already working on it. We're doing a great job here in America, don't get me wrong. But a lot of the packaging developments are coming from Europe. That's just the way it's always been. The materials that are mostly recyclable today are oriented polyethylene or oriented polypropylene materials. What that means is that it's a monolayer. Historically, we've been used to doing laminates. This is all a single material, a single main material that's being used. If we step back a little bit, in my history, polyethylene was a dirty word, right? Because a lot of the frozen foods were in polyethylene. It was a really difficult material to seal. Today's environment or today's technology uses oriented polyethylene, oriented polypropylene, that allows us to use the same heat sealable mechanisms, bars, cartridges, thermocouples as we do for laminates. But there's some things that we need to talk about because it's not 100% without their issues. These are general observations that we have from a machinery perspective. Generally speaking, oriented polyethylene has narrow temperature sealing bands. So what does that mean? It means from a laminated film perspective, you might have a 40 to 50 degree window of temperature that you can use to seal the film. With monolayers or even oriented monolayers, that bandwidth, it gets very narrow. From a runnability perspective, a lot of times you have to slow the machinery down. And the one figure that's shown here is that you have laminated films versus speed and oriented polyethylene versus speed. If you take the same machine as it is today, I can almost promise you will be running slower. With some modifications of the machine, you can overcome some of those challenges. A lot of the oriented monolayer materials do have a lower temperature for sealing, and we can deal with that. I'll show you how and why we do that. And then there's also plant-based materials for compostability. Two different things, but the same way to approach the retailer objective. So a lot of those films have high stretch properties. What does that mean? It means that if you're trying to do a register bag, let's say on a vertical machine, typically we're doing plus or minus 1 to 2 millimeter cutoff. With these type of films, without having additional help, it's going to be plus or minus 5 to 6 millimeters. Huge difference. A lot of your retailers and customers won't accept it. And it's frankly, it's out of the range of what we would consider normal. So how do we deal with this? Well, from a machinery perspective, we can add multiple seal stations. What that helps you do is for low temperature oriented polyethylene, polypropylene, it allows you to slowly heat up that film without burning it. It gives you a nice gradual heat transfer. It also gives you a little bit more time on the machine to maintain your speed. In other words, instead of using one heat seal bar, you use two to maintain that speed integrity. The other part of it is a lot of the monolayer materials, if you look at them, they have a lot of wrinkling on the side edges or the top seal. With cooling, you not entirely eliminate it, but you get it to the point where it's acceptable. It's never, at least with today's environment, it's never ever going to look like a true laminated bag. It can come close. It's probably acceptable to most retailers, but you really should have some kind of cooling integrated into your machine to get that nice wrinkle-free look on a bag. The combination of the two ensures maintaining similar speeds for laminated films. Again, this is what we know today. I can promise you it's going to change tomorrow, and it's going to change in 2.5 years. So this is one way of ensuring that you have enough of flexibility when you're buying machines, that you're preparing yourself for the future. So our recommendation as part of ProMach is to make sure you have enough of sealing stations on your machines so that you have the flexibility for different materials, plus a cooling station so that you can cool down the material prior to getting it to case packing or to the marketplace. Sounds like a minor thing, but I can assure you in 2.5 years it's going to be a much bigger thing. And then for vertical form fill seal and horizontal form fill seal applications, we're actually pulling film through machines, whether it's done horizontally or vertically. You're pulling the film through either heat seal rollers, dancing rollers, printers, etc. For compostable films, because they are stretchy, if you go from, let's say, the back of the machine here to the front of the pull belts with stretchy films, you're not going to have registration, just like I was talking about. So what we do is add pinch rollers or film feed rollers. It's not new technology, but it's something that not every machine utilizes, either in horizontal or vertical form fill seal machines. we would strongly recommend it so that, you're preparing yourself for the future of recyclable and compostable films. For those of you who don't necessarily want to invest in new machinery, which we totally get, you need to be prepared to do something like this on your existing machines. It means having an extra station built in somewhere into your machinery, considerations for extra heat stations or cooling stations. On form, fill, and seal machinery, you need to think about putting in a measuring roller to help relieve some of the tension in between the film itself all the way up to your primary film feed. It sounds simple. It is, from our perspective, sort of simple, but there's a lot of complications that we still have to overcome. And part of our corporate initiative is to also be green, to be consumer friendly. We want to be part of that green environment. And so from a machinery perspective, we work hand in hand with film suppliers. I've personally walked around to a lot of, some of you here talked about what we need to do to make things better, what we need to do to advance both sides of the film and the machinery side of it. We have a long way to go, but as of today, we are providing solutions for recyclable materials, and really thank you for your attention. That's a great question. So the question was, how does the recyclable material and machinery affect cost for production? As of today, it's going to be going up. The supply chain is not totally to the level at which it is with laminates. So because of that, it is going to be more expensive. From a machinery perspective, generally speaking, I don't want to speak for our film partners that say that's not true. There's a generalization that it is more expensive as of today. In the future, I know that's going to change. It's just like anything else. The more you make, the less expensive it becomes. And then from a machinery perspective, it's going to increase just slightly, but over the long haul of amortization of 10 to 15 years, it should be fairly insignificant. At ProMach, we do both flexible packaging machinery and end of line. It's all the way through the production line. So, for instance, corrugated. There was a point in time where a lot of the major food manufacturers of fast food chains use wax-coated corrugated. That's almost non-existent. There's a lot of mostly poly-lined or poly-wrapped burgers, let's say. That's changed quite a bit. The other side is stretch wrapping, right? Stretch wrapping of pallets sort of fits nicely into compostable films. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.